I'm Diane Cece, the president of East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. Co-piloting tonight is board member Marianne Johansson. We also have board member George Hensinger and board member Sarah Hunter. I think that's it for the board tonight. We're going to try to make this a fairly quick meeting tonight, but I'll say that it's the beginning of a discussion that we want to continue over the next couple of months. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second here. Okay, so for the agenda tonight, one quick announcement, or actually two quick announcements. One is if you got the ENNA email this weekend, you'll see that the city is hosting the first of what I'm assuming will be at least two, maybe more, public engagement meetings for the industrial waterfront land use study. And that is a sub-study of what came out of TOD and the funding for that plan to look specifically at the waterfront parcels, excluding the marinas, which are primarily down at the beach area, but all the waterfront that goes along the Norwalk River. The committee that has been working on that in the city has met 3 times. The email that I posted does have videos of their meetings, and there, I think, are some minutes posted on the city website. So if you wanted to just observe what the committee has been working on before they're bringing this to the public tomorrow, you can certainly watch those. But we do encourage everyone to attend this meeting tomorrow night. It's the Planning and Zoning Commission's committee made up of consultants and a number of city officials. It's, I believe it's 6 to 8 p.m. And the link to register for it is in our email and also at the tomorrow.milwaukeect.org website. And another quick announcement is that we just got notification from actually Tom Keegan, one of the city councilmen. He has posted a list of a number of city board and commission openings. And from time to time, people express an interest in serving on a board or an agency or a commission in the city. And we do encourage people to do that. Over the years, we found that the 06855 portion of East Norwalk tends to be underrepresented in most of city government. So we encourage people to take a look at that list. I will email it out. And if there's something you're interested in, you can contact folks at City Hall or contact me for more information on what the next steps would be. But I'll also add in here that ENNA is going to be starting what we hope will be a robust campaign to enlist more board members for ENNA because we really need some a more, a larger board and people that bring different interests and talents and passion to it. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. For new business, it's really what we're talking about tonight is we wanted to get members of the public tonight and as a continuing discussion to really step back now after the past couple of years we've had where we've been put in a position where we've really been reactive to a number of land use issues and playing kind of whack-a-mole, just trying to keep up with the land use zoning changes and applications that have been thrown at East Norwalk, not just from the city, but also from a state level. And so we want to take a step back and kind of go back to looking at what the original role and goals of ENNA were and get some feedback from the community on what you would like to see ENNA either continue to be or evolve into. And again, we'll be asking for people to provide feedback on how you think we can enlarge both the size of our current board. We've lost a couple of great members who served their terms and have moved off the board, Charles and Roberta Di Bisegli. And we'd like to fill at least 2 seats right away, but possibly get our board to be as large again as 8 to 10 members. And then just another thing in new business, because I do get emails on this from time to time, of questions of people wondering what might we be able to meet in person again. So the overriding decision on that has been obviously the health concerns around COVID. And while there's been surges and different variants, all of the possibilities of meeting again in person have been put on hold. But I think maybe I'm optimistic enough to think that maybe come this spring or summer, we can resume. It would just be a matter of when we would do that and where. The Marvin, which was our original meeting space, is still not open to the public, but they also will be experiencing a change in their executive director in March. Mary Wint, who has been a phenomenal director for them for, I can't count how many years, is now retiring. So someone new will be coming in. So at some point we need to have a discussion again about meeting in person, and to see if we can get creative within the community to try to find some appropriate space for us that would be comped, because we have a very limited budget, but that it would also be comfortable. And so we'll want to talk about that. But I do want to say, because we had questions on this as well, when we do resume meeting in person, we do intend to still have it streaming via Zoom, or similar technology, and we would still be recording. So for people who can't attend in person, they can attend via a live stream, and they can also then review our videos after the fact. Okay, so I just want to talk for a couple of minutes and then open this up to the group. I think most people realize that the past couple of years have been challenging for ENNA in terms of really having to step back from more of our proactive role in terms of quality of life issues in East Norwalk, and really focus on a number of the land use issues that came at us, things having to do with East Avenue Improvement Project, the Walk Bridge Project, the TOD study, the subsequent designation of East Avenue is the TOD zone, which, as you know, passed in December. And so ahead of what we think could be a pretty rapid influx of special permit applications for land use, we want to step back now, not try to be in a putting out the fires mode, and really get back to what the grassroots effort of ENNA started as. And so if we go back and just take a look at ENNA, the underlying role of ENNA has always been to educate, inform, and enable. To educate meaning really reaching out to the community so that they understand the role of government and how it impacts our everyday lives, mostly with quality of life issues. To be in a position where we can quickly and effectively disseminate information. That's on meetings, on public hearings, on land use applications, on changes in ordinances within the city, etc. And also then to provide the tools that would enable the public to participate at whatever level is comfortable for them. And it really falls under kind of the umbrella of teach a man to fish, rather than have ENNA in a role where people bring issues to us and then the board is in a role to go and kind of solve them. That's not really what the purpose of ENNA is. It's more to educate and enable the community to participate in a way to effectively solve issues. And so when we talk about education, we're talking about Government 101. We realize that City Hall can be a confusing maze of different departments, and that's from the day-to-day running, but also from a political point of view of, how do people get elected? What are their roles on the Common Council and other agencies and boards, and how do those things affect us on a daily basis? Also, in terms of education, goes along with providing some context and history on what has been the quality of life and preservation and land use issues in East Norwalk. We've tried to do a little bit of that on the website to try to start to build where people can go and really just kind of read for themselves the, what has been going on in East Norwalk in the past 20 years. And then finally, to provide tools that enable a comfortable level of community participation. And by comfortable, I mean, we want to be in a position to teach people how to use tools to impact government, but do it in a way where people feel like they're able to participate and not be uncomfortable. Some people are great at writing letters to the editor. Other people are great at speaking at public hearings. Some people like to go out and meet their neighbors and walk around flyers and petitions, etc. So we want to make sure that we have things in the toolkit that are readily available and easily shared with the community so that they can be more active. And so just running through two things quickly, I just wanted to talk about advocacy versus activism. And I bring this up because it comes up often when we're talking about the role of ENNA. And it may sound like it's just like a subtle difference, and they do overlap. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that ENNA really was founded, and for most of the time of ENNA has really been more of an advocacy role. And that's really more of a proactive role to look at what issues are that impact our community and advocate for government policy that addresses those on the front end. And more importantly, to advocate for policies that prevent controversial and stressful issues from, even happening in the first place. And when we talk about advocacy, we really talk about being able to impact the big picture issues. Advocacy really turns into activism when you're at the point of, say, a special permit application for a land use. Once that special permit has already been applied for, now you're in a mode where you may move into activism to either oppose it or try to improve it. But in the advocacy role, it's really to do two things, is to ensure that we have a transparent and participatory government. And by that, I mean a government that's communicating effectively with residents so that they know what's going on. They know they're able to understand it, or it's presented to them in a really understandable and easy to read format. And that government makes it easy for people then to participate based on information. And then also advocacy for improved quality of life and preservation of our natural and historic resources. So that's kind of what the role has been. And it's where we really were until we moved into this, having to move into an activism role based on land use issues. And so that brings us to then the question of whether ENNA should be proactive versus reactive. And if we look at kind of a grid, and I'm sorry I didn't make this, but if you look at a grid of an ideal situation for a neighborhood association, you would want it to fall along the lines of being an advocacy group that is proactive, more so than an activism group that's reactive. Those are two of the most likely roles that an association plays. And typically we would want to lean more towards the advocacy and being proactive. And that's because, one, as you might suspect, being proactive tends to be more effective because you're impacting things before they become, a fire that we have to put out. And just by virtue of that, they also are less stressful and less adversarial, because it tends to be improved cooperation between residents and city government. It does require greater participation, to be proactive, and it does require thorough planning and the improved cooperation with government between residents, the association, and local and state government. Being proactive also would enable us, hopefully, to move off of what has become the why bother sentiment in the past couple of years. We get a lot of feedback from people. In fact, we got feedback as recently as this morning with people saying, why do residents bother at this point in Norwalk? And it's not just in East Norwalk, it's all over the city. Why do people bother when the city comes out to us with studies or initiatives or plans to find out what it is that the community wants, and then for all intent and purposes ignores the resident feedback and really does whatever they want to do? And sadly, we've seen that I think I've rattled them off one day, but it's the last 6 major planning and studies that the city has done. And so if we talk about trying to move to be proactive, one of the things that it does is it moves us off of the why bother back into the we matter sentiment that says we, by being proactive and working with the city and bringing our concerns and our solutions to the city, it forces them on the front end then to acknowledge what the community wants and to make sure that our voices matter before these things are done in closed rooms and then brought out to the public as kind of this is what we came up with, even though most of it was decided long before the public engagement sessions. Now, having said that, though, and hopefully that was clear, but I'll answer any questions on this because I'm trying to talk quickly so our meeting is not overly long tonight. But having said all of that, there are going to be times when reactive is necessary. And it's because either something came in, under the radar screen, either we weren't paying attention or we didn't have the type of relationship with government department or commission that they felt compelled to keep us informed from the very beginning. Or sadly, in some cases, there are just so many things that end up starting behind closed doors. We don't really have a chance to even know about it until it's almost too late. But there will be times then where ENNA as an organization will have to be reactive to something. And when that's the case, my advice would be that we need to then be in a position to be quick and decisive and consistent. And I think all that really means is that we need to set up some kind of basic toolkit so that when we do have to react to something because it's moving in a hurry or it has a great impact or it's something that could actually be voted on, by the commission or by a land use commission, by the Common Council or a land use commission, then we need to be able to go to this toolkit. I don't really want to call it an arsenal, but we go to this toolkit so that it's easy for us then to be reactive. And if our response is consistent, then it also will make it less adversarial. The city will already know that this is a role that ENNA and our residents play, and that these are the steps that we're going to take in terms of dealing with an issue that we've been forced to be reactive to. Okay, so given that, and that's just kind of an idea of what ENNA could be or should be, what we wanted to do tonight was have a brief discussion, an open roundtable with those of you who were able to join us tonight. We do recognize it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and also a lot of people had the day off, so we weren't expecting a large crowd, but we certainly want to interact with the people who did show up. And thank you for coming, by the way, and talk about a couple of things, but it's just the beginning of a discussion that we want to have over the next couple of months, and also to really do some better planning then for the February meeting so that it can be more productive and really chunk into what we want to see the role of ENNA be and where we need to make changes to how we're doing things today. So what I put here was 2 questions, but we can open it up to more. The first one you see there on the board is the what do you personally, as a resident, see as the role of ENNA, and how do you think that ENNA can be most effective? And I would say when you're thinking about that question, I would put on both hats. More effective, our role of advocacy and how we can be more effective with that, but also our role of activism and how you think that can be most effective when we have to use that as a tool. And then second, what fresh ideas do you have to make more residents aware of ENNA and encourage them to stay informed? Because the bottom line is that we've reached still a fairly small percentage of all of the households in East Norwalk. And so part of our goal in terms of education and information is making sure that we are getting the information to people, what they choose to do with it, and what level they choose to become involved is entirely up to them. But our goal is to make sure that as many people as possible know 2 things. They know that ENNA exists, and they know what our role is in providing information to them. Okay, and then finally, I'll just say that because we're not going to have a long meeting tonight, or because many people just don't have a comfort level in speaking in this type of public forum, we would also encourage you to go ahead and email us at info@eastnorwalk.org, our regular email, and share whatever concerns or suggestions or comments, ideas that you have. And then also, for those of you who are involved in social media, we get, I think, most feedback in terms of Facebook and nextdoor.com, to go ahead when you see items and issues that relate to East Norwalk, to go ahead and have dialogues there with your neighbors as well, and communicate with them on what you think issues are and what you think solutions could be. Okay, so with that, what I'd like to do is, again, I'm thanking Mary Ann Johansson for co-piloting here. The idea would be, if you want to jump in, if you have questions, comments, or concerns that you want to raise relevant to this discussion, or if there's some new business that you feel is compelling, because we do only meet once a month, you can also bring that up here, and we can just go ahead and open it up to the floor at this point. And I think too, I see somebody raise their hand in chat, so if someone could monitor that.
Yeah, Diane.
Okay. Yep. Hi, Mayor. Thanks.
Yeah, Judy had made a comment earlier when you were speaking. I didn't want to interrupt you before.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
But she wanted to ask if there was space at City Hall to meet.
Okay, that's a great question. So at one time we did used to meet in City Hall. We met there monthly. And then we had 2 goals in mind. We really wanted to try to move the meetings back to within 06855. And that's when we moved over to the Marvin. But also, yes, I would say that there would be space, but there was also an issue at one time with City Hall about the space not being able to be used for an organization that didn't hold the proper amount of insurance to be able to be in the building. For the time that we did meet at ENNA, we were covered under the umbrella of the CNNA, which is the Coalition of Norwalk Neighborhood Associations. And because all of the associations came under the purview of, believe it or not, the redevelopment agency, because they had community services under them, we were all kind of covered under this blanket to be able to have our meetings there. But at some point, they started to back away from that. So to answer your question, Judy, I would say that yes, it's still a possibility, but we would have to see what kind of insurance the city specifically requires, and then get a quote on that individually as ENNA, because there's no longer that group, as far as I know, under redevelopment that covers that. But that would also be a great question for the community as well, is if there's a comfort level in meeting at City Hall again. It's certainly close enough to everyone. And generally, if our meetings stay on Monday night, there's generally very little activity at City Hall on Monday night, which means there's plenty of parking and typically our choice of meeting rooms. So I'm at least happy to look into it to see if it's still a possibility, and we'll put that on the table, because I really would like to, as soon as people feel safe to do so. My feeling is I'd rather be with all of you in person, always to do these meetings.
Judy also just commented, what about Veterans Hall across from Stanford High?
Across from
the Stanford High, which I'm
no, okay, so maybe the American Legion Hall, across from Norwalk High School.
I don't know. It just said, do you want me to unmute Judy?
Yeah, I think that's Norwalk High, she said. Okay. Yeah, so the American Legion Hall would probably be available. They do their hall as a paid rental, but I don't know if they have either a no fee or a nominal fee for nonprofits. And so that is another venue we can look at. Again, it's out of the 06855 area like the City Hall is, but we do still overlap and get a lot of support from the 06851 East Norwalk community. So as much as I would like to keep it in 06855, I personally am not opposed to staying within Eastern Norwalk. We did have a member, and I'll reach back out to him again, just as the whole TOD thing was starting to wrap up, and mentioned that he was aware of a resident who he spoke to that might be that has space in East Norwalk, that might be willing to pro bono provide us with meeting space. And he's one of the people that I'm going to be reaching out to. And then someone, I think, just wrote, Masons have offered. That's true. So the Masonic Hall, thanks, George. The Masonic Lodge at Gregory and Cemetery has offered, and that was based on a discussion, or in line with a discussion we had on them being able to do the zone change there, that allows them to sell their excess parcel land for residential. And that would allow them, as you heard from their presentation, that would allow them to have enough funding to renovate their current property and bring it up to a code so that their meeting hall and their social facility could then be renovated and they could rent it out. And one of the things that they did commit to was being able to provide space to the nonprofits. And luckily for us, presumably that would be at no charge. And again, it would be on a Monday night, which is completely free for them. So yes, they're still on the table. They are actually, I just wrote to them 2 weeks ago, and they are moving ahead with the request for the zoning change. I did not see it on the planning and zoning agenda for this week, so it's definitely not on for this month. Maybe as soon as February, I don't know. But that would certainly be a good option for us. Again, plenty of parking. And when I did the tour with him and he showed me what their ambitions are for that meeting and social hall, it would be wonderful, because it would literally be built brand new. It would have a full kitchen facility. It would have audio visual. It would have a like a portable stage. a number of different options for seating arrangements. It really would be quite good. I also thought too that as new developments come in, and possibly even with Brim and Crown, or what's going to be the Wells Fargo development, et cetera, that we can also reach out and take a look at having some space there, and possibly 25 Van Zant. So there's a number of opportunities that we can look at. While I'm on Wells Fargo, I'll just mention to you too quickly that I also recently spoke with Mr. Descala, and he is thought that he might be one of the first permit applications to come in this month, even based on the TOD zone that got approved, because Steve Kleppen did indicate there were several developers who literally were waiting in the wings for the approval to go through. But he told me that he's not one of them. He's not ready to file yet, and it could be several months. Okay, thanks. And then Judy, yeah, East Norwalk Library does have meeting room. Unfortunately, they are not ADA compliant with accessibility. So one of the things that ENNA strives to do is, whenever we are holding a function of our own, is we try to use a facility that is accessible for everyone in our community. Did anyone want to talk about kind of the role of ENNA, or ideas for, or just share even your personal opinion of what you think, maybe what you thought ENNA was and what it is and what you think it should be, what direction you would like ENNA to go in? Another option I'll throw out there just to consider, it kind of falls under the activism and reactive mode of being an association. But one of the things that we can do, if we feel that we just don't have the bandwidth to be proactive, one of the things that we can do is move back to kind of a hiatus stage that we were in a few years ago, where we did not meet monthly. But basically what we did was we were activated as an organization when major issues came up that would affect us. And that wasn't always land use issues. It, could be anything to do with the city or the community. But that does mean that, we meet infrequently, and it generally means having to spend a lot of time then each time kind of bringing people up to speed. But if we thought that that was more worthwhile, it's the type of thing where we, at one point we moved to meeting every other month. And then ultimately, I think Sarah might recall, I think then we moved to meeting just 4 times a year. And then we went over to just issues related.
Sounds about right. I recall it that way.
Yeah. And again, I'm personally open to anything. I really would want to encourage an association that's really reflective of what the residents want. George?
It's obvious that this whole city tiptoes around Roayton. Now, what's their secret? Is it lawyers or what is it?
When you say tiptoes, do you mean like the types of things that are related to development and everything that happen?
Yeah, someone said, well, next is Roayton, and everybody laughed.
Yeah, no, exactly, because I think there was some sarcasm there too. I think it has to do with the nature of how that area, the location of the area, first of all, with its waterfront as well. But I do think it has to do with how it was specifically zoned. I also think that it has to do with, if you look at the district commissions, the 6th taxing district, I think they're the 6th, that commission versus the 3rd taxing district commission is very active in the community. And they're very active with city government in terms of protecting what they believe is the character of Rowayton. So that's one big difference that we have right there between Rowayton and East Norwalk, or actually the other zones in the city. But I would say that there is kind of a hands-off approach there, and some of it is maybe that you don't bite the hand that feeds you, because I've always been just sarcastic in the past and thank all my Rowaytonite friends for paying for everything in the city. I mean, their taxes are just, astronomical, and the jokes about them seceding at some point, have really been, sometimes they seem very serious. But I can say to that a lot of people in East Norwalk have embraced the sentiment of asking the city to do a litmus test whenever they're looking at East Norwalk. And it would be, if you wouldn't do this in Rowayton, then don't do it over here. And so I tend to agree with that, because I do, like many of you folks and many residents that are, normally engaged with us, see us more as, like a, waterfront village community, and not the same, as Wall Street or, even Golden Hill or, Silver Mine, or, all of the other neighborhoods. And, after all, isn't that what makes Norwalk great, is, the diversity of our, not just our, our population, but also our neighborhoods are so unique, and there's so many different, aspects to each of the neighborhoods. And that's why I think each neighborhood is kind of protective of, wanting to preserve what they have. And I would disagree with some city officials who like to say that that approach means that we're saying East Norwalk is an entity unto itself and not a part of a larger city, because that's not what we're saying. We understand that we're part of a larger city, and we understand that the amenities that we have here are part of a larger city. I mean, we have Taylor Farm and Veterans Memorial Park and Calf Pasture Beach, and we have a train station and I-95. So we do recognize that. But the whole Rowayton thing is kind of I don't know. I can't really answer that, George. I can only speculate on what it is. But I can tell you that when you look at their zoning is designed to prevent many of the things that zoning now has evolved in our neighborhood to include. They're going through a very controversial battle right now, though, with a development that many people are not happy with. And I don't know if that one's going to result in a lawsuit. And this is what ends up happening, is the neighborhoods that have very deep pockets with their residents are able to fund lawsuits and either get things shut down or to bring developers back to the table and make some, serious changes to what the development is going to be. And we don't necessarily, we do have it in East Norwalk, but not to the extent that the other communities do. Okay, do we have some other comments or hands up or suggestions? Do people have questions? It's about 7:45. I think we can go like another, 5 or 10 minutes. And I always like to ask, did someone come to the meeting where they have a specific concern that they wanted to bring to our attention, and maybe get some information on how they can, what the steps would be for them to address it?
Hey, Diane.
Yep.
Judy in chat had also just asked about what the development was. I believe she's referencing what you were mentioning in Rowayton.
It's one that I don't know who the developer is, Judy, but I know it's one that's at the water, at the river there, and it has to do with the height of the development, because now it leaves people who are like across the street and further inland where they had a clear view, I guess, of the water. Now this building is higher than what would have normally been approved in Rowayton. And of course it was a special permit. And I think what happened is that there were people who were opposed to it, but it may be one of these cases again where they found out so late about it that it basically was a done deal, and there was little that they can do. And again, it was one of these things that the zoning commission embraced, although it surprised me that that they would allow it. But I'm glad you asked that, because this is a good example then of advocacy. One of the things that really has impacted neighborhood associations having to be both reactive and taking on an activism role is the fact that by the very nature of statutes and local ordinances, residents are at a distinct disadvantage for knowing about things in time to be proactive and to impact something. By the time we know about pending legislation or an ordinance change or a land use application, it's sometimes, unless you're paying very close attention to agendas, we don't really see it until there is a public hearing notice. And we wouldn't actually know about it unless someone is reading the legal notices. So when we're talking about advocacy, one of the roles I think that I would like to first take up as an advocacy and proactive role is to work with the city and get them to commit to providing timely, accurate, effective communication to residents on things that are going to affect our quality of life, our home values, etc. We alone, and we in conjunction with CNNA, presented a long list of very doable and very reasonable requests for action items that this city can start virtually immediately that would help to do that. For example, let's say they wanted to make a major change for a use in Veterans Memorial Park. The public might not hear about that until it's almost a done deal for all the reasons that I just said a moment ago. But if the city was required to post placards at all sides of the park that were legible and that were, weather, inclement resistant. And so people who use the park or walk by the park or drive by the park or live by the park would then see a placard that said something to the effect of, a permit change or land use change. And it would give a brief description, and then it would give the website and a phone number for where to go to get more information. Another thing along those lines is that when something did come to be a public hearing, because they only have to publish in the newspaper 10 days before, and it's in size 0 font and nobody reads them, we should also require developers in the city to do placards that announce that there's going to be a public hearing, and that placard should go up and as soon as the date is known, and it should go up and stay up until the public hearing. And we can also talk about having the city do better communications to residents if they opt in for emails. For example, New Orleans has an opt-in program called Notify Me, and you simply go in and you put in your address, and there's a laundry list of items that you can pick from that you would like to be notified on if anything triggers an action there, like land use action. And in New Orleans, you can even identify neighborhoods and geographic areas. So for example, for us, you might go in and opt in and say, I want to know of every proposed land use change within 06855. And so then you would automatically be emailed as soon as either a developer application came in or if the city was proposing a land use or zoning change. That's an example of where ENNA can advocate for better communication coming from City Hall. And I think also, as you know from me, I think we desperately need to work with City Hall to also change the procedure of how public hearings are done. But that's for another night. That would probably take a whole discussion there. I'll mention too that Mary Ann from the board and I had a discussion today about, now that the TOD zone is approved, and the next step will be special permit applications coming in. And that's where we can impact exactly what the uses would be and talk about the size and scope of what some of these developments could be. That it would be a good idea for us to be proactive by working with the city ahead of time to provide them with kind of a wish list of what residents would like to see as these parcels get developed. And it could be a blueprint that the city staff, including the Jessica Casey, the head of economic development and planning and zoning, she could use that as a proactive tool when she's meeting with prospective developers, either those who are coming in on their own with ideas, or when she is hopefully being proactive herself with her department and going out and seeking the types of uses that we want. You know, so if there are things that we want, you know, in the community, then, you know, we should see City Hall as our partner in going out and trying to encourage those uses to move in and do a good selling job of why they should be here in East Norwalk. And I think, and to really get developers and potential businesses to understand that, you know, there's no easier way to get something going in a community than to go to the community with what they want. There literally would be no resistance to it. So it really ends up being a win-win. The city can bring in the type of development that makes economic sense from a grand list point of view. A developer can come in with a program that they know is going to be widely accepted by the community. And the community knows that they'll get what they want by working with the city and the developer. Does anybody have any ideas before we wrap up on what other tools you think we can be using, or that you think that we haven't been using, in terms of reaching more residents in East Norwalk to be aware of ENNA, and also to get them to sign up for all the different communication vehicles that we have? And then second to that is, what do you think that we should be doing to encourage more people to participate on the board? George, did you want to jump in?
Well, I just think once this virus has calmed down and we can actually go face to face and have meetings in person, that I only found out about this thing. I've been living here 36 years, and I only really found out about it once the TOD came out and my house was in the had an X on it, you know, and so. I think we could be at least guest speakers at the parent PTA and these organizations, just to get the word out. I'm sure more people would sign up if they knew about it. At least that's in my impression in my case.
Yeah, I agree too, because we do, when we are engaging people with these kind of, whack-a-mole things that we've been having to do, as each one of those comes up and we're very visible in the community, that's when we seem to get a big hit of people either going into our Facebook page and liking it. We'll get more hits on our website, and that's when we get chunks of people signing up for the email. So I totally agree with you there, George, is that we've, got to get, more out in the visibility in the community. And I think it would be a good idea for, as we're more in person, that we could go and speak to different community groups that have a large population of people who live here.
Well, just for instance, I was on the manning the Kiwanis booth at an event at the American Legion where everybody had a table and could
Yeah.
present, and the Salvation Army was there, and
Yeah,
you name it. There was about 10 different organizations.
yeah,
Each had a table, and you were at least able to talk to some people and hand out some
Yeah.
flyers.
yeah. Yeah, I saw that. I actually even thought about if we should get a table, but I knew that I couldn't, I'm still COVID weary. So I knew that I couldn't man it, and I wasn't sure about, getting anyone from the board to go and take some shifts over there. But I think that is the type of thing that we would want to do. We did have a table when the East Norwalk Business Association hosted the Taste of East Norwalk events down at the Shore Haven. It's not the Shore Haven, the club that's next to Sunset Grill. And then we, always had tables and information at like the League of Women Voters events, etc., just so that we can hand stuff out. So I definitely agree with you. As we're moving off of COVID and we're more physically in the community, we should take advantage of all of those. Even the DPW open house that they hold is a great venue because a lot of families come out to that. So we should be watching the calendar and maybe having like a, in business, it would be like your promotional or marketing calendar, but an equivalent of that, where we can look at the community activities and see if we want to get a booth there, even if it's a nominal payment for a booth. Things like at the NICE festival that's over in Oyster Shell Park. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Have a table wherever we can. And at one time, I know with CNNA, we tried to organize something at City Hall where it would be a neighborhood association day, and I think at that time there were 14, really active associations could all have a table. And so people from the community could come in and they could give their street, and we would tell them what association they were in, and they could go and pick up pamphlets and information and meet some people from the association. But I think we maybe just, just doing that in East Norwalk is a great idea. And we have the table and the banners and and we can do printing and handouts. And I am going to check the funding too, because maybe we just do a generic mailing, a postcard mailer to every house again, not about an issue, not about, stop Norden, more just about, did you know East Norwalk, has an association, and, this is when we meet and this is what we do. Is that's fairly, inexpensive to be able to do that. Judy said, my husband says donuts. Oh my gosh, yes, food. What brings out people more than donuts or, bagels in the morning? So yeah, got to always make sure that we have food at these things. And then last call now for anyone who wanted to bring up a specific issue, any quality of life things going on. Is there any question that you have for me? I can bring you up to date on goings on in the city. And George and also Judy, I'll add to that. And I just saw Judy said she'll actually bake some stuff. So thanks for that. I'll be the taste tester if you need. In lines of getting back together again in person, I think that we really do need to get back to our forums again. And get into some really interesting guest speakers, because our forums and our guest speakers have always been the meetings that bring out the most people. And I think that what we need to do is two things. We need to have a forum that is just government 101, just so that people can come. It's so intimidating to so many people at City Hall, and it was to me when I first started. And I would really like to have just a fun, engaging, government 101, so that people aren't so intimidated by interacting with government. And then maybe, and I think Charles D. Bisegli, because he's still volunteering to help us when we need, I would love to at some point put together a series of videos on topics where we can have just a video library within our website that people can go and they may like look up like what is planning and zoning all about, what is recreation and parks about, what does it mean, with special permits, and just a kind of a fun educational thing, and they can go, and it would be generic enough where people can go and just educate themselves. And then, maybe have a library too, just on East Norwalk itself, and even I would use that. Just, like on the history of East Norwalk, and, some of our industries. And even within East Norwalk, we have little mini neighborhoods that are very interesting, little clusters that people may want to learn about. Okay, so I think it is just about 8 o'clock. So last call. If not, I want to thank everybody who hopped on. And if you think of something after the meeting, or you just weren't comfortable speaking up during the meeting, then please email us. It is info@eastnorwalk.org. And then our next meeting is in February. It's Monday, February 21st. But you'll probably be receiving emails from us in the meantime, because Mary Ann is going to be working with the city and with me, and we're going to be looking to resurrect some of the fabulous survey feedback that we got from the community over the whole TOD process. And then maybe reaching out to get people to provide more information to us. So in between now and February, I'm just going to be doing stuff via email, and it will be weekly emails. Again, you guys may have noticed a lapse over the holidays and in the fall too. We had a little bit of a lapse there in terms of committing to doing weekly emails, but we'll be back on track with that. And so I encourage you to open them and, at least scan through them and take a look for any information that that's important for you. Thank you, everybody.